Hi, I'm Jim Rice. I'm the Deputy Director at the MIT Center for Transportation Logistics. And I have the great pleasure right now of being here at the Malaysia Institute for Supply Chain Innovation. I came from industry, so I earned a degree in mechanical engineering and then a master's degree in business and finance, and worked at Procter & Gamble, General Electric for up to around 14 years. And during that time, I spent time in operations, I spent time in distribution, spent time in sales. But for the last 21 plus years, I've had the great fortune of being here at MIT. And so I'm kind of a little bit of practitioner and academic. So some people wonder, why are you teaching this class in supply chain financial analysis? I mean, the supply chain folks, they need to run supply chains, right? Well, we in the supply chain, I think we have to do a much better job at communicating what we do to senior executives in the language they understand. Senior executives understand the language of finance, the language of business, which is finance. You got to talk into financial terms. So what we do in our course is we help students understand how to look at the supply chain through a financial lens. Now this is important because in today's world, the supply chain is not just a cost center. The supply chain is a business enabler. It is really the heart of the economic engine that is the business itself. So if an organization wants to grow, you're going to depend on your supply chain to enable that growth. If the business wants to compete in a certain way, it's the supply chain that's going to enable that. And so we in the supply chain have to communicate with the senior executives in their terms and also be able to articulate the value that we're adding in the supply chain in financial terms. Again, we're growth enablers. We're the ones who are enabling that business to grow the business and to serve the customers. We're not just cost centers. So being able to articulate what we do in financial terms is really critical. One of the emerging areas where we think about supply chain financial analysis being important is an area called supply chain finance. And this is where a buyer and a seller, of course, they have an arrangement. One provides products, the other provides a payment. But there's a delay often in that payment from the time that the products are delivered. And supply chain finance is basically making an arrangement with a third party to provide some financing to that seller who has an obligation to pay from the buyer, so that the seller gets paid much sooner than they otherwise would have. Let me give an example. There's a case we teach in our supply chain financial analysis class where it's called Supply Chain Finance at Procter & Gamble. And here, Procter & Gamble has made arrangements with several banks, and they ask those banks to provide financing options for their suppliers. One of them in particular in Brazil is called a company called Fibria. Fibria provides pulp products to Procter & Gamble. And it's a really wonderful arrangement because what it does is it allows Fibria to get a loan from a bank at pretty close to the rates that a larger company, Procter & Gamble, gets the loan. So what you do is you have a small company, which would tend to be riskier and would pay a higher premium, getting a lower loan rate than they would otherwise. And basically they're trading on the benefit of having Procter & Gamble, in this case, as a supplier, as a customer rather. So it really takes advantage of a couple of things. The supplier, they have an asset, which is an obligation to pay. Procter & Gamble has a low risk premium. And by going to the bank with those two, we're able to find a match that works out quite well for both organizations. And in fact, it works out well for the bank because, of course, the bank's in the business of making loans, and here, you know, Procter & Gamble is delivering a whole lot of additional loans for the bank to make. This week I'm here teaching at the Malaysian Institute for Supply Chain Innovation and the Supply Chain Financial Analysis class. And I got to tell you, I'm having a great experience. We have what turns out to be a very capable and interesting group. It's a little unusual in that there's a very active engagement from all the students. You know, as an instructor, sometimes you have to pull teeth to get students to contribute, and that's not the case with these students. And what I've enjoyed is the deep amount of questioning the students are asking of me as the instructor, but also the challenges that they're offering to each other in the discussions in class. You know, we use cases in some of the sessions, and what we've been able to have is, you know, it's not exactly a smackdown, but you have one opinion and another opinion, and the students are very healthy and respectful, but they're really engaged and arguing and making the case for their particular point of view. And that's really enabling them to learn an awful lot more. They're learning about the particular situation, but they're also learning how to articulate. And again, I found a really good experience from this set of students. All very actively participating, and many of them capable of very obvious critical thinking, which will make them very good leaders in the future. So for those of you who may be considering coming to the Malaysia Institute for Supply Chain Innovation, let me tell you that if you are fortunate enough to be granted admittance here and you decide to join, you're going to be joining a long line of very competent and capable students. And you're joining an institution which is really doing great work in a number of different venues and facets. I like to think that this group has the benefit of dedicated facilities and a wonderful environment. The business environment, I mean, the location is wonderful, but the business environment is really exciting because there's a lot happening in this part of the world. And by virtue of being here, you are going to get access to a lot of the companies who are doing work here and interested in engaging supply chain leaders. I also think that you benefit from a very rich set of instructors, and you get the benefit not only of the instructors who are teaching here, working here day in, day out at MISI, but you're also getting benefit from other instructors who come to visit.